Hey everybody, it's Erik Torenberg, co-founder, partner of Village Global, a network-driven venture firm. And this is Venture Stories, a podcast covering topics relating to tech and business with world-leading experts. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Venture Stories by Village Global. I'm here today with a very special guest, David Booth. David Booth is a network leader at Village Global and co-founder CEO at OnDeck. David, welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be here, Erik. Thank you.
We've discussed a lot about OnDeck in different episodes and wanted to take an opportunity to do a whole episode on OnDeck, not just the company and what it's doing, but more broader than that, the OnDeck phase, what it's like to be in between things, looking to start or join their next thing. What are some of the ideas behind co-founder dating, co-founder picking, thinking about ideas, thinking about social capital and building early communities. It seems that more and more today, founders are taking a swing at their next thing, even though they might not know exactly what it is. And so communities like OnDeck and others are helping de-risk it for folks. So first, I want to introduce why we started OnDeck and then get into some of the practical, how entrepreneurs should think about it. So first off, I started OnDeck to solve my own problem, which was I was at Product Hunt for a few years. I was looking to start my next company. I didn't have a co-founder in mind. I didn't know what idea, but I knew I just wanted to be in an atmosphere where people were thinking about that consistently. I knew I wanted community. I knew I wanted brainstorming. I knew I wanted potential people who I could co-found with. And so I started doing these dinners. And what I realized is if you go up and down Silicon Valley and go to Facebook, Airbnb, Dropbox, take all the companies, a lot of other people are in this boat too. They vaguely think they might want to start a company in the next year, and they just sort of need the structure to help them do it. So those dinners turned into events. We did these events for basically 3 years. That's where David came in, and David started running OnDeck London. And before I knew it, OnDeck London was the best event series. And so I said, hey, come run this full time. And I want to get to why you're so excited about OnDeck, David. But first, let me just say the reason why we turned it into a real company about a year ago was we realized that the why now for OnDeck is a fewfold. One is that not only have the barriers, to starting a company never been lower, and you'll get into some of that, but also culturally. I think we had some tropes that were holding back founders. One of them was that you had to know who your co-founder was. You not only had to know him, you had to have gone to high school with them or college with them or worked with them in the past. And now we're seeing that people can be matched. Founders of Coinbase met on Reddit. Founders of StemCentrics met on Craigslist. That trope isn't necessarily true anymore the way it was. And other ones are that you have to be passionate about an idea or you have to know exactly what you want to do, have experienced the problem yourself, and then go solve it. But we're seeing lots of companies, Thumbtack, there's one that comes to mind, 4MBA is another, heresy in startup land, just say, hey, let's methodically go through a bunch of business ideas, start experimenting, and then pick the one that works the best. They didn't have passion for solving problems of janitors or whatever it is who was getting work on Thumbtack. And so those are some of the tropes that, having been debunked, you can now methodically approach building startups in sort of a functional way instead of it being sort of the magic moment or the magic co-founder. That's why I'm so excited about OnDeck. How about you, Dave?
I love it. There's a whole sort of layer behind this, and OnDeck to me today seems almost inevitable for me to be building on. My career has been orientated around how do you reduce friction for startups being created. As even dating back to the AngelList days when I was helping to build tools to help fundraise and get distribution and hire, and all of those were addressing this. Once you've already got a startup, how do you do it? How do you grow? But overlaid on that is this continually sort of reducing cost and complexity to actually start up and to build companies. Like what used to cost millions to get started 20 years ago, what used to cost a couple $100,000, 5 years ago. Today you can start no coding. You can spin up an MVP and get users in your nights and weekends. And to me, a more stable society is an anti-fragile one where everyone is building companies. There's this inevitability of more people will start companies. Sure, a lot of them will fail, but what's the scarcity now? It's not so much the capital, it's not so much the skills, it's actually the community. And OnDeck is this. To me, originally, it was a place where interesting people would come together and privately, have the confidence to share their plans and their ambitions, and for others to be able to help them and to be able to pay it forward. It's all of the things that I was looking for at a point in time of my own career. And the opportunity to build through London and through sort of a year and a half or 2 years of really helping to grow the community over there, and all the while seeing what was happening over in the US and seeing the New York and the San Francisco on-deck communities really ticking up. So when the opportunity came up late 2018, early 2019 to jump in full time and see what we can make of this and time it with a lot of the shift to more people being empowered to build companies. How do we help them?
Yeah. A couple things I want to follow on to why it's important that something like this exists, and for all other people who are trying to solve this problem, God bless you. Let's all do it together. Keith Raboy, you like to say that he came up with the idea of Open Door in the early 2000s, but he waited 15 years to find the right team to do it. Imagine if he could have incubated that much sooner. He could have been on to the next company, onto the goals company, onto the cybersecurity company he wants to start. A big bottleneck for starting great companies is great co-founder matchings. So for great companies, let's have great co-founder matching. Also, there's this trope in startup land that some people say that there's too many founders out there. And I think this is so wrong. I think the opposite. I think there's not enough founders out there. And I think it's evidenced by the valuations increasingly rising. I think if you had more great founders, we'd have a more sane market. And I think there are a lot of bottlenecks to why people aren't starting companies. One of which is co-founders. Another is things like health insurance or other infrastructure that would make it easier. And other is just community and accountability and social opportunity.
So there's two big things, and that's absolutely one of them. The way I think about it, what are the bottlenecks today to building more companies, to scaling more companies? One is totally the co-founder liquidity and the access to talent. It's most startups are formed with partially or poorly formed teams, frankly. This trope that Erik talks about, that you have to have built a startup with someone that you went to school with or someone you worked with previously, limits it to almost like if you were romantically dating only the people who grew up in the same village as you. The opportunity here is to help people align themselves with better teams from the earliest stages, which can increase the cost of, can increase the chance of success substantially. To us, it's about what is the opportunity cost of human potential. If you spend 2 or 3 years building a startup that doesn't have the right people or doesn't have the right momentum, how could you have better form that team to increase your chances? The other one is, again, what we've kind of talked about here is in a world where everybody can build, everybody can start, and everybody follows sort of the wisdom of building something people want. How do you figure out what people want? Attention has never been more scarce. So getting the buy-in from a network of really well-connected early adopters and advocates. I remember having a conversation with one of our recent fellows, Sean Linehan, who's just founded Placement, raised $3 million from Founders Fund and some great people. He said, coming into the fellowship, he knew that he had the ability to raise capital. He knew he had sort of the ability to hire, but it was the 40, 50 conversations he had with really, sharp founders, each of whom were navigating their own journeys, which allowed them to accelerate, allowed them to go into the first fundraising conversation with a really well polished response to just about anything an investor could ask. So excited to see more Sean's coming through the fellowship.
I want to debunk another myth out there that you're sort of born to be a founder. Some people say it's good that there's all these barriers to starting companies because then we could separate the wheat from the chaff and we know who's really great. And I think there's this sort of post-rationalization that happens among successful founders where once they're successful, they say, of course they were born to do that thing, or of course they always wanted to start that logistics company or whatever it is. Whereas I don't think we say the same thing in, the military, for example. Like, there's some people who go to Afghanistan and frickin' crush it in the military, and they weren't like thinking, oh, they were born to do this. They sort of stumbled, into it, and once they found themselves there, they took it on as their mission and absolutely crushed it. And I think we can have a lot more amazing, engineers and business people stumble their way into starting a company. And with the right infrastructure and tooling and community and support system, take it upon their mission where they didn't know that it was possible prior.
One thing that I think really does help in that, how do you make the founder, and this is something I'd love to hear from you actually, because one of the things that really drew me into the OnDeck community in the first place was this sense of belonging, and the sense that people were there not just to take and get what they expected to get from it, but they were all going in there knowing that they were there to pay it forward to others. And I wonder if there's a common theme that you can share, because I know you've done this a few times now, how building communities at Product Hunt, building communities at OnDeck. What is it that works about that? Like, how do you build a community?
Totally. So it's a great question. I mean, great communities are around, they're around value and around values. And so value in the sense of utility, what are people getting out of the community? So Product Hunt, it was, people were getting traffic on their early products and feedback and able to promote it to a wider audience and seeing it first. And for OnDeck, it's getting, potentially finding a co-founder, huge value, but then also feedback, brainstorming, navigating the idea maze together. But what people sometimes forget is that second part, which is values. What do you stand for? And OnDeck is very much inspired by Product Hunt. For Product Hunt, values were, this was going to be a positive place. If you had negativity, some people say, hey, could you just recreate this on Reddit? Yeah, you could have, but go try and do it. Hacker News doesn't have that positivity. If you were if you were going to be decidedly negative or criticized for no reason, get out of here or go do that somewhere else. And so we had a pro maker mindset. We think makers and startups are good for the world, and anyone trying to do that is doing something noble, no matter what it is. It has inherent value in and of itself, and we were going to create a supportive environment to do that. And same with OnDeck. I mean, if you guys, one is you're going to act in service. People are in fragile, vulnerable spots in between their next thing. So one we have a confidential environment. You're not going to let someone know who went because, hey, their employer might not like that. But two, it's just a very supportive environment. If you have introductions you can make, please do. If you think they have business ideas and you think they're not great ideas, be constructive or be positive and support anybody who's trying to start a company. We're decidedly pro maker, pro startup, and I think that is pro civilization if you're pro technology.
One thing,
in the right ways.
Yeah. One thing just to build on that further, I've certainly learned prior to and since working building OnDeck has been the sense of a community only being as strong as the purpose that it's set for it, and the people who are excluded from that, who don't come in for that purpose. And one thing that I think is really valuable just to dig into OnDeck is that phase of being OnDeck. I mean, it's both capitalized in name, but uncapitalized as a verb, as this state of being OnDeck, and even people who are very, very talented but aren't quite there. Perhaps they've passed it. They're already sprinting, already building, or a lot of the value comes out of this sense of mutual exploration.
So we've talked about what makes a great community. Why don't you talk a little bit about how we switched from these sort of one-off events, even though they're recurring, to more of the fellowship model, and what's the experience like in the OnDeck fellowship?
Yeah, for sure. So the first 3 years of OnDeck was, as you say, it was small events, get the right people in the room and get out of the way was a motto. Each event might have been 25 to 30 people, 3 or 4 hours. And it was great. And I think there was a lot of serendipity that came from that. You happen to be sitting across the table from someone at the dinner and you'd have a coffee afterwards. And a lot of companies went on to be built that way. But we came into it saying, how do we increase the impact that any given person can get out of this? We need to increase the liquidity in the room, have more people to give each of one of those people a better chance of finding the right person to be building with, or the person who can help them with a particular problem. And frankly, we need to give them more time, because 3 hours isn't enough to have a meaningful conversation with everybody in that group regardless. So the first fellowship was born of just this grown-up, longer, bigger version of a classic OnDeck event. It was getting 120 of the right people in the room. And that room was 8 weeks. It was a dinner and a co-working day every week. And, a retreat at the end of that, this remarkable community that was formed. And as a result of the experience they had, went on to refer 65% of the people who were participants in the second fellowship. Now, with the second one, we said we've got this remarkable base of people in San Francisco, but we've also had a community in New York for a very long time. There's some incredible people over there. Let's run a single cohort, but with people on both coasts. And so 120 people again in San Francisco who are all around this profile of experienced talent, maybe 5-6+ years, either having built a company, maybe they sold it, maybe they wound it down, maybe they were leading engineering teams or product teams at big tech companies. Similar kinds of profiles on both coasts. And when we onboarded them to the OnDeck community, put the retreat at the start of it, so that there's this incredible bonding event at the start. And day one, the online community just blew up. It was part the sort of the spanning both coasts, being bi-coastal in nature, and part, I think, the front loading of a lot of the really intimate relationship building. So as we've seen this, and I think going into the third fellowship, the retreat is a really key part of it. You know, it's opportunity to come in and both spend 2 day. It's a 2-night retreat, a full day in the middle, getting to know a group of 10 to 12 people who we call your squad within it really, really well. They're your close relationships, and getting to know 70 to 80 people as your loose ties. Each of those people is a node into the broader OnDeck network. We see the opportunity to have more and more resources wrapped around those people. There's co-working space being made available. There's immersions where we're doing 2-day little micro unconferences with amazing speakers coming in to talk about things from hardware to Planet Plus or climate positive startup building, through into building SaaS companies, building biotech and longevity. Really excited to be working with Laura Deeming and the Longevity Fund and a few other amazing partners around that. But again, I think it all comes back to this original vision of get the right people in the room and get out of the way as first. And now we're starting to build more structure. We're not getting out of the way straight away. We're building the kind of the rails for those people to find each other, find co-founders, find advisors, and also leverage the broader OnDeck network. There's now upwards of 10,000 people in the talent database, and we'd love to help find the right matches out of that as well.
Totally. And we talk about our long-term goal being the monopoly on talent. And our first 2 big products we're working on, one is a fellowship you just mentioned. I want to segue into the other one, which is related in a bunch of different ways, which is Cosign. And I want to talk about, I'll mention a couple of the reasons why I'm excited, and then we'll pass it back to you. So I'm really sort of excited about peer-to-peer credentialing. And I've been excited about it for a long time because, what I like to say is, if you, David, were to tell me the 5 people under 22 that you think are most likely to succeed, I would value that more than a Harvard degree. And a Harvard degree, people pay $250,000 to get. And we've seen, zooming out, in the last 10 years, people don't go to Harvard for the education anymore. The education's free. Why do they go? They go for the network and the credential. Now, things like OnDeck, things like YC, things like Pioneer, these lots of great communities have unbundled the network, so you no longer need to go for that. Okay, so you're going for the credential. That's the last part. Now, going back to your list, you have a list of 5 people. Everybody has a list of 5 people. That is worth more to people than a Harvard degree, and yet it's sort of social capital being left on the table. Like, I don't know that list for you. I don't know that list for anybody else. So can we create a place where people are giving peer-to-peer credentials? On the other side of it, I also think, everyone is trying to, you do the great tweet storm of everyone is trying to be a great talent discoverer. Angel investor was the status symbol of last decade. Maybe talent curator will be of this next decade, especially as individuals, as we move from a corporate level to an individual level, as ISAs make every person a business. There will be opportunities to get in early, financially and socially, early social capital bets. And they're, increasing returns to scale for putting people in business. I think YC figured this out more than anybody. There's this great story where I'm talking to a Sequoia partner, and he's saying, hey, YC invested $120K in Airbnb and spent 3 months with them. I invested tens of millions of dollars on the board for a decade, whatever it is. This person wasn't on the board, but he was mentioning what Sequoia's been on the board. And every time that Airbnb goes to talk to the press, they talk about YC, not Sequoia. Why is that? Well, you remember the person who put you in business. And that's why people want to mentor young people. And so going back to Cosign for a second, someone discovered Mark Zuckerberg, someone discovered Elon Musk, someone discovered, Steve Jobs. And I bet those people are pretty good discoverers of talent. How can we incentivize more people to take bets on younger people by rewarding them for doing so, by giving them social capital for saying, hey, you discovered this person before they were anything. Maybe you should start a fund off that. Maybe you should get a raise off that. Maybe you should start hiring more people or start looking for more people, and let's start giving rewards and credit for people who do that so that we get more of it.
I love the two key pieces here. So I want to have another go at transitioning the two, because it's quite important when people look at OnDeck and they say, well, right, you're building the fellowship and then you're building Cosign, and which one are you doing? And I think the two are actually intimately linked. And the way I take it from the top down is a lot of the venture capital industry is this bundle, and over the last 10 to 15 years, it's been a bundle, a very successful one of capital, of credential, and of community. And the credential comes with having a great firm on your cap table. The community comes often among the portfolio, or in the case of an accelerator, it might be your classmates and that. Now, if you sort of believe what we said earlier about more and more founders coming through, and frankly, more and more people have their own credentials from their experience growing an earlier startup, then as more and more people want the third element of that bundle, there is an opportunity for us to create a community which is incredibly valuable, and it can be offered to people for a fraction of the value that they're otherwise giving up. Now, the credential piece is very interesting. That with Cosign, it is what we like to say, simply put, it's a reputation layer for the internet. It starts out by saying LinkedIn endorsements done right. So unbundling, we're introducing incentives and scarcity. The incentives, like Erik mentions, are people do recognize that they want to create a track record for themselves of having been recognized for discovering talent and supporting talent early on. Others out there just want to uplift the aspirations of those around them. They realize that it's a valuable thing they could be contributing to society just by telling those entrepreneurs that they're working with to continue pushing, continue aiming higher. The product itself has seen some great people engaging with it. I mean, we have been building this over last 5 or 6 months, interacting with a lot of people who have been sharing cosigns, helping us discover some incredible people. Some of them come back through the fellowship. Some of them are out there building what they're building in the world, and the social capital investment that those people have made in them will start to pay dividends over the next decade or two.
Yeah, and a few sort of things that we've heard feedback as we shared it with people that I want to address. One is, hey, why is credit important? Why do people even care about credit in the first place? And I think some people are too sort of proud to receive credit, or they see it as too self-promotional. And I think the important thing about Cosign is that it's other promotional, and you want to co-sign people so they can spend even less time self-promoting themselves. This is for people who, I mean, it's for everybody, but it's particularly beneficial to people who just do the work. Let's recognize people who do the work so that they don't have to be constantly, promoting or credentialing themselves, so to speak. And I think when people don't get credit, that's how they get underestimated or underrated. I think what I like about the term cosign is it's sort of had place in popular culture, like Lil Wayne cosign Drake, or Paul Graham cosign Sam Altman. I was talking to my mathematician friend, and apparently Erdos co-signed Terrence Tao. I could be pronouncing Erdos incorrectly, but people of higher status and higher fame and accomplishment giving an opportunity to people to enter the trust graph, enter the sort of respect graph, means the world. It means a lot. Yesterday, I tweeted that a lot of young people are focused on building their own brand and not realizing that if they could spend 2 years being a chief of staff to someone awesome, or spending time building someone else's brand, that could open doors for them that wouldn't be open otherwise. For example, Anuj Jabral, Justin Khan's chief of staff, now going out to start his company, he'll get the backing of someone like Justin Khan, or Alex, who was chief of staff for Sam Lesson, now starting his company, he'll get the backing for someone like Sam. So cosigns are important. Another thing I want to address is that some people say, oh, well, won't cosigns only help people who already have really strong networks or really strong relationships? And I think it's a little bit misguided in the sense that when you transition sort of the credentialing from individuals to institutions, you now have agency. So if you want more diversity in technology, whatever that diversity is, or if you want to support different types of people, co-sign them. You can make a direct impact, or encourage others to co-sign them. It's way easier to get people to do things than it is to get institutions to do things. So we hope that this will encourage more diversity, that this will encourage more opportunity. And it's not zero sum. Harvard is, as Peter Thiel likes to say, it's the Studio 54. They can only have limited slots, whereas cosigns are positive sum. We're now introducing, hopefully, tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of credentials that didn't exist prior. Obviously, there won't be a billion, otherwise cosign wouldn't mean anything, and we are going to have limitations on how many people can be cosigned. But over time, I think we'll actually introduce different gradations. So there's always opportunities to bring new people into the fold. And I already have discovered new people through Cosign, and that's what I'm most excited about doing it. And the reason why I've been thinking about this idea since Product Hunt, I've been thinking about Product Hunt for people. And the reason why I couldn't figure it out is because it feels a little bit weird to put a person on hunt a person or have them on a 24-hour competition, and they're not going to promote themselves, say, hey, upvote me. And so I couldn't figure out the mechanic. And the mechanic is the early social capital bet, where people want to be known for discovering talent and want to be rewarded for doing so. So they can create a fund or create whatever they want to do, just pay it forward into the universe and encourage others to do the same. So I want to segue into, David, you had this great tweet storm about why talent discovery and curation is going to be even more important than it has been in the past. Talk about that.
I'd love to. The sort of starts around similar places. My company building thesis. Over time, technology is built that abstracts away the complexity of running your startup. And that's literally operating the servers, or acquiring the users, or building a brand in a niche online. And I think another component is the complexity of operating that. And over time, my thesis is that as the complexity of running a startup gets extracted away, the only real job to be done is talent. You've got to find people, make bets on mispriced talent. You've got to motivate them to your cause. Similar piece, frankly, for a VC or anyone that wants to be in the industry of investing or backing other people. How do you prove yourself as a good VC? Or if you today want to be a VC in 5 years' time, well, you've got to identify talent. You've got to prove that you had a relationship. You had the ability to invest in them at that time. So over time, the one real skill, the one job to be done is how do you track and help people. Now, you then look to what should a founder be doing today? What should an investor be doing today? There's a lot of opportunities to find people and support them and to co-sign them, frankly. Not everybody has the financial capital available to invest in a friend's startup as it gets going, but I think everybody has the ability to support that friend by making an introduction to someone that's useful for them, to attending an on-deck event and looking for an opportunity to help someone in that room, knowing that when you make an introduction from your friend to an investor, you are co-signing that person. You are you're in some way attaching some of your reputation to saying this person is worth your time and attention, when your time and attention is one of the scarcest resources you have. Yeah.
The other company building question I want to ask you that we get a lot is, should people be building their companies in San Francisco or elsewhere? Obviously, we launched the On Deck Fellowship in San Francisco, had one in New York. We're expanding, so we'll also be remote. You can talk a little bit about that. But where's the best place to build a company? How should entrepreneurs be thinking about it?
So I've come at this from a pretty diverse international perspective. I was a venture capitalist back in New Zealand a long time ago. I've worked in London and venture and built a company there. And in all of those places, I think there are remarkably talented people, and it's more and more you can live anywhere and you can build products. So I come back to that. What is true today, though, is that the networks of capital and power and, frankly, experience still centered around San Francisco, and to a greater extent as well, or more and more so these days, New York and other places. But you need to be able to be connected into those networks to find the right people to help you build the companies that can scale to reach the world. And so it's a thesis that we've adopted somewhat in On Deck with this next fellowship, is helping to my soundbite is it's never been more important to be connected San Francisco, while never being less important to actually build your company here. With the rents continually rising, the cost of labor here is incredible, and it is possible to build valuable companies on a totally distributed basis or in other great cities around the world. And we hope to build that infrastructure with On Deck. So in this next fellowship cohort, it is based in San Francisco. We're kicking off in March. There's a very, very in-person community. I do think that getting offline and getting FaceTime, getting in the room with the right people is really important. But we're accepting fellows from just about anywhere, and we're doing a lot of this based on our networks as they exist today. There's been On Deck events in 23 cities around the world over the community era of On Deck, and we're tapping a lot of those people and saying, hey, who is the most talented entrepreneur? Who's the repeat founder? Who's the just sold their business, took some time out, and they're going to go back and do it again, living in Berlin or Singapore or Austin, Toronto. And we're really excited to be able to bring this mesh of global sort of culture and talent and perspective together. For the people who are actually based in San Francisco, that brings a lot of value as well. Now, if you are an incredibly talented, experienced engineer running around San Francisco looking for problems to solve, chances are you're going to end up building something which serves people like you, which is great. There's a lot of those opportunities, but there's also a lot of opportunities out there in the world. And if we can bring somebody into the fellowship who's a repeat founder with 10 years of experience building in Africa or building in Europe, they may bring some kind of cultural insight to you that you can be the co-founding pair for this team. You can join, you can recruit them to your cause. And what you build as a result becomes that much more impactful. So there's common themes here of less and less important to live in and come from the same kind of backgrounds, but more and more important to actually be deeply connected to each other.
And also that Silicon Valley is not just a place; it's a culture, and we're helping export that culture.
Right. I've heard time and time again local governments, city governments saying, let's build the Silicon Valley of Australia, of the UK, of wherever it is, and you can throw money at the problem, you can build tech hubs and buildings, you can promote the fact that there is X amount of venture capital dollars raised here, which is percentage increase on last year, but it's that culture and that connectivity between the right people and the people that are really inspired to build.
And part of the culture, maybe to wrap a bow on this, is it's sort of pro maker, pro technology, weird is cool. It's okay no matter what you look like, no matter how old you are. If you're super old, super young, wherever you come from, if you can perform and you have good ideas, they will rise to the front more so than in other fields. And it's truly about to the best of its ability, merit based, and we're all on the same team. More so because you don't know who the next Zuckerberg is going to come from, and so you want to pay it forward, positive sum.
One of the best things we've started seeing too is as we build out this community, and it's sort of intentionally designed for experienced talent. We want and are very selective about people having had experience. Coming to this, you want to be able to teach people something that you are the best in the world at. But there's a huge amount of very intelligent, very ambitious people who haven't yet got to that point of having an expertise developed over a long career. And if you look, almost a metaphor across education here, in that you have primary school, secondary school, you have college, you have postgraduate education. Each of those, the types of things you go in for and the types of things you expect out, very, very much. And if you think about, say, an MBA today, and you go to an MBA at a top school, you're going in there expecting three things. Again, it's a bundle. It's an education, the curriculum, it's the credential of that school, and it's what it's associated with, and it's community that comes with it. It's the people. It's almost cliched to say that you go to do an MBA for the network that comes with it. And I think similarly to the sort of the venture unbundling that we talk about, there's one happening in education, and the curriculum was the first to go. MOOCs and online access to resources was it's been a theme of the last decade, but it hasn't solved education. It hasn't really fundamentally changed much. because it's very hard to create a credential without the respect of this online only program. So you see more and more approaches, say the Lambda School approach that is very much around a community. People who are taking different approaches to building a credential. Now, for some portion of the population, going through a traditional track to education is simply not the best, the best aligned path. Now, for the vast majority, college probably is the best idea. But for the few for whom spending a couple $100,000 and spending 3 or 4 years of the most productive times of their life, pursuing a degree, which ultimately, when you get out and you want to go and build your company, all people care about is, can you do the work? Are you a productive, high output person who can achieve your goals and continue to learn? Yeah. And I think there's going to be some very interesting stuff, and I know that On Deck will be involved in this in the next 5 to 10 years, certainly, where we can create alternate career tracks for people who are kind of thinking about their college alternatives. How do you get the breakout roles that have been so formative? And certainly my career, Angelus for me was a breakout role. It was changing a trajectory that's got me to where we are today. And how do you create the community or the collegiality? Because if I was to advise someone young not to go to college, you'd certainly want to know where the community, what community they're going to fit in, what collegiality, what campus they're going to attend to recreate some of that experience.
Here's what I'd like to see ambitious young people do. A few things. One is create their own syllabus. Here, don't go to the college courses. Don't pay for it. Create their own syllabus. Here's what they want to read. Here's what they want to learn. Here's where they want to go deep. Get feedback on it from mentors. Get a board of advisors for your syllabus. Go hang out on a campus or even different campuses. Audit classes. Make friends with other people doing the same. Publicly blog. I love the idea of spending 1 year at Harvard, another year at MIT, another year on a startup, and that's if you don't choose to take one of these sort of. Obviously, I'm speaking to sort of super ambitious, super proactive kids here, but the Teal Fellowship or Pioneer or what On Deck's potentially cooking up soon. Wink, wink. Stay tuned. Nudge, nudge. Or any of these others sort of structured gap year programs. Just structure your own. And I think you can get, we talked about earlier, it's the credential, it's the network, and the education. The education is abundant. All it depends on is your desire to learn it. The network is out there. Go get it. Go create it. Go be a part of it. And in terms of credentials, hey, get co-signed by some amazing people.
There's another subtract to this, which is, all of this is great in the perfect world, but some people just simply don't have the financial resources to, go and move to San Francisco and wing it while they try to hustle their way into a startup, or to go and, audit classes on a college campus. And there's been this, a lot of talk in the last couple of years about ISAs and about the different ways of aligning incentives with the backers or the community and individuals within that community. And there's a few really interesting things that I think will start to come to the fore here is how do you align incentives between groups of people, what I call horizontal ISAs, and between verticals, between individuals and kind of the new emergent institutions that want to help them learn a new skill or transition through a career change. One thing that we spend a lot of time thinking about is, with entrepreneurs, the value capture mechanism is not often income in a pure salary or dollar terms. Sometimes it's equity, and there is an opportunity to to allow people to take some sort of working capital for themselves, but also to feel a part of a rich community of their own that can support them, and to either turn it into an ISA if they get a job, or if they sort of build a company which is just a cash flow asset and they can start to turn an income out of, or if they do build a company that convert into that company in some way, and to align the incentives with value creation of an equity kind. Is this problem I always raise with any ISA called the Jeff Bezos problem. It's if you're an ISA provider and you gave a ISA to Jeff, then he built an incredible amount of shareholder value, of equity value, but didn't take a salary for the first 10 years or first long time of that life. So you as the provider would have lost out on that. And I think the next phase for this, to be able to help more people transition that gap from, knowing they're going to build something, not quite knowing what that is, not quite having the credential to be able to go out and get investment blindly from VCs or angels, or even in that case, if you did, and you know that you probably will build a company, but there's a good chance you'll join a company, or maybe you'll start a fund, maybe you'll go raise a micro fund, and you don't want to take money from VCs or angels because you don't know that you want to go and build a venture outcome. There's a big green space of opportunity to explore here.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap. We've given a lot to chew on. So for people who want to learn more about the On Deck Fellowship, Cosign, or what's to come, David, where can you point them?
You can certainly find yourself at beondeck.com, On Deck on Twitter, Erik on Twitter, me more so on Twitter, just retweeting things that On Deck says. And we'd love to hear from you as well. Anyone that has questions, it's pretty easy to get hold of us, either the team at beondeck.com. There's a lot of people out there in the community now who've either put their fellowship status on their Twitter handles or their LinkedIn profiles. Others who are running events around the world. We've got active communities in London, in Berlin now, in Sydney, in Melbourne, Toronto starting up in February, in Delhi and Bangalore starting up in March. And all of these are just people locally that really lean into the On Deck spirit and are bringing it to the communities.
And I think 15 or so have become Village portfolio companies just in the last 6 or 7 months. So On Deck is a separate independent company. Do like to keep it all in the family. So David, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and stay tuned for more.
Thank you.
If you're an early stage entrepreneur, we'd love to hear from you. Please hit us up at villageglobal.vc/network catalyst.